We know nothing about Australia's mammals right through the period when Australia separated from Antarctica at 35 million years ago, until suddenly the window is thrown open and there are thousands of fascinating things to look at. They document the last 26 million years of Australian history in exquisite detail.
With every fossil-rich boulder recovered and bone, tooth and jaw released from acid bath, the ancient animals of Riverslea are telling their own backstory of Neogene Australia. It was in the Neogene that Australia began to show its true colours.
The beginning of Riverslee's story was of a rich forest. Cool, temperate, permanently wet, no seasons. So we started thinking about this as a kind of a green cradle. Here were the first brush-tail possums. Here were the first ringtail possums. Here were the first koalas. All the things people think about today as typically Australian animals had their roots in these ancient rainforests.
By the time Riverslee's window into time was closing, around 15 million years ago, the rainforests had begun their long retreat. As the continent edged closer to the equator, the blooms of many new types of flowering plants started bursting out across the land. Amongst them, a previously low-profile, low-spreading plant took root. Grass. For the first time, extensive grasslands spread out across the continent, ready for the nibbling. Think Australia, and one grass-grazing animal above all others leaps to mind.
Kangaroos are the archetypical successful mammal in Australia. They've taken over every ecological niche, from the tropical rainforests, in the treetops there, through to the harshest deserts in Australia. And they do something that no other large mammal does, which is to hop.
Perhaps the most energy-efficient means of forward motion developed by a mammal, hopping allows kangaroos to move vast distances over a tough country. The quintessential Australian they may be, but how did such a biological oddity come about?
So if you can take the bag from me.
It's a puzzle that mammologist Tim Flannery has sought to solve since his early 20s.
It's got very, very coarse hair. I crawled around on my hands and knees for days on the edge of a salt lake, and I finally picked up this thing that was the size of a match head, really. It was just a tiny bone. And I knew immediately, I put it on my tongue, washed the salt off it so I could see it properly, and knew that it was the ankle bone of an ancient, ancient kangaroo, far more primitive than anything that had been seen before.
Tim had found the missing link between the kangaroo's tree-loving possum-like ancestors and the ground-dwelling, grass-nibbling hoppers on the country's coat of arms.
If you look under the microscope here, you'll be able to see that little stepped facet there. See how it's got like a double step on it?
Oh, absolutely. It's clear as day.
However small, the shape of this ankle bone is the key to the kangaroo story. With this stepped facet locking the bones closely together, ankle twisting was a thing of the past.
Kangaroos evolved from possums. Possums need to have a very flexible foot. If kangaroos had an ankle like that, they'd dislocate their ankle every time they hopped. And that step structure is what they evolved.
All this early ankle experimentation took place in the rainforests of Australia's Green Cradle. And it's back in the damp jungles of North Queensland that you find the closest surviving relative of the first kangaroo. And here she is, the musky rat kangaroo. The most primitive living member of the kangaroo clan, and a living fossil.
The first thing you'll notice about this busy little girl is the way she moves. No matter how long I sit here watching her eat food in the forest, she'll never hop. Hopping for kangaroos came later.
Down from the trees, and now with improved ankle bone technology, the first kangaroos were set to make that giant evolutionary leap. And in many ways, the story of their evolution charts the course of the drying out of the continent itself. Not only new animals emerged out of this green cradle, the plants were changing too. The old Gondwanan forests shrank steadily back to the country's damp coastal corners. And in their place rose another true Australian original, the gum tree.
Now this is a tree definitely worth hugging. Meet Centurion, the tallest eucalypt in Australia and the tallest flowering plant in the world.
This towering Tasmanian mountain ash, a species of eucalyptus, has recently been laser measured at 327 feet high. Only the giant Californian redwood, a conifer, grows taller. The eucalypts have come to dominate the country. Gum trees have proven themselves in the toughest environments Australia can throw at them. They laugh off droughts and stand tall in the floods that follow. They soldier on deep in snowfall and respond to the perishing heat of a bushfire with a burst of new green growth. These are the trees that love a sunburnt country. And just as well. About 5 million years ago, desert began to finally claim Central Australia. The last vestiges of a jungle flora, now surrounded by a sea of sand and spinifex,